Welcome back, folks. I don't have all the parts I need to finish this Telecaster today, but I'm going to go ahead and get it to the point you're seeing here. So follow along as we do that. Alright, so you might be wondering why you would want to use compensated saddles in a Telecaster bridge versus the three independent saddles that are straight across. Well, the answer is intonation, and I've talked a little bit about intonation before in my videos. This is a set of compensated saddles. I don't normally use Wilkinson parts on a lot of my builds, but in this case they make a pretty decent set of compensated saddles that are actually brass. I don't know what compound of brass they are, but they are brass. And there are multiple options from Fender and other vendors, but these are pretty cheap. And in my mind, for the price that they are, I just as soon try them out. So this will be what's going on this guitar. So let me get this package open. Okay, so you might be wondering, is there an order to these that they're supposed to be installed? And there is. If you'll notice, there are two of these that are the same and one of them that's different. On two of them, the left side, the highest point on the left side is further back than the highest point on the right side. So that's this one and this one. And on this one, the highest point on the left side is in front of the one on the right side. The reason that you want to install them in this order with the two matching ones on the outside and the different one in the middle is because the G string is normally the one that gives everybody problems with intonation. Most of the time the E and the A are in this rough order. You know, the E should be compensated a little behind the A. The same with the B and the E. The B should be a little behind the E. But in the case of the D and the G actually ends up behind the D. All there is to installing these is insert the screw through the bridge, the spring on the screw, and then the screw into the saddle. That's going to be it. Now you'll have to do a little bit of a balancing act to try to keep everything in place while you're putting it together, but that's more or less it. And I can tell you right now, the easiest way to take a guess at intonation is once you get this saddle on the right side installed, if you measure from the point of contact of the string to the end of your nut, it should be roughly equivalent to the scale length of the guitar. So from the nut to this point right here should be 25.5 inches on this guitar, and then you'll want to go back sort of, you know, they'll go back in a little bit of a line trailing back toward the low E string. So this saddle will end up behind the other two, this saddle will end up behind this one, and so on. So that's basically compensated saddles in a nutshell. So I'll just go ahead and get these other two installed. Alright, and then just to zoom all the way in and show you, this is my best guess at my intonation right now. There are some previous scratch marks on the bridge that show me roughly where the saddles were on this bridge before. It wasn't on this guitar before, but it ought to be kind of close. I have installed them at a little bit of a diagonal line here, and I've dialed in a little bit of action. One thing I will note about these Wilkinson saddles, they use an Allen screw instead of a standard slotted screw, so not quite vintage, but they should be nice in terms of tone, and of course they'll provide me with the compensation that I'm going to need. So on the wiring for this guitar, I mentioned, I think in a previous segment, that I was going to use a 12-lug switch, and that is what a 12-lug switch looks like, at least the Oak Grigsby style. And you can see it's got two completely independent sides, so it's got 5 lugs on one side with a common, and 5 lugs on the other side with a common. And while they are independent, they do move together. So you can see the little connections there. You know, I've got 5 different positions. Each one of these is singular. That's a little bit different than a regular 5-way switch on a Fender, because on a regular 5-way switch you'll see on positions 2 and 4 that it's connecting 2 pins together, and there's only 3 pins total in terms of positions with a common extra. So this gives you a little bit more options. It gives you basically the same number of positions on the switch, but I can have different things happen at each of these 5 points on each side. I mentioned earlier, I think, that my pickup selections are going to be when I'm in the neck position, I want the neck pickup active. When I'm in the bridge position, I want the bridge pickup active. When I'm in positions 2 and 4, like I want to add the middle pickup into the each position, so like neck and middle and bridge and middle. But when I'm right in the middle, I want the standard Telecaster configuration, which is just neck and bridge. If you go back and look at my Charvel TX diagram, or the diagram that I showed in my Charvel TX video rather, that'll show you what I did with the 5-way 12-lug switch and how that works. So pretty cool stuff. Also went ahead and aged the cover here. This is not a Fender plate. It's a Chinese replica, but these are Fender knobs, and I've used good Bourne's pots and a nice axial circular capacitor there, and good cloth wiring and a switchcraft jack, so it's got good components in it, and all I need to do now is get it mounted into the body. I'm getting ready to mount the pick guard and the control plate. I'm still waiting on my neck pickup, so this may be a little while before I can finish it. When I line up my pick guard and my control plate, obviously this body has no holes in it for those sorts of things. All I've got is a route for the control cavity. I've got a few reference points like the bridge that I mounted and the neck that I've mounted. So what I'm trying to do first is make sure that the pick guard looks like it has an even amount of space on all of these edges here, and that it's also square with the bridge here, and that there's not a huge gap around the neck. So once that's in place, I just need to make sure that my control cavity still has a little bit of room on both sides, just to wiggle around a little bit so that I can get some wires in alongside the components. And I have also laid a post-it note down here and drawn a line that's parallel to the bridge, and as long as I can match the side up with that, it will look right to the eye when you're looking at the guitar. So even if this isn't completely parallel with the neck, as long as it's parallel with the bridge, I think that's where I want it. So I'm pretty close here. Right about there is where I think I want everything. And I've got 8 of my Fender pickguard screws lined up here. I just need to drill some holes. So I'm getting ready to drill these holes. Basically, I found myself a drill bit that's smaller than the shank size of the screw, and I'm talking about the center of the screw without the threads. So it's even a little bit smaller than that. You could measure that, use a number drill to get really close if you want, but I just eyeballed it. Also, I've set a depth stop, or at least a marker, on the bit with a piece of masking tape to give myself an idea of where I want to stop. And I want to stop just shy of the end of the screw to let that end of the screw get just a little bit more bite in the wood as it goes. And then I'm also going to use a center punch and a little hammer to make my indentation. And when I line this up, I'm going to start with this hole right here. All you need to do is make sure you're where you want to be. Find your center of that hole. Make a tiny indentation. Drill it out. And then place that screw. Yeah, that's got everything locked together nicely. And really now all I need to do is I'll place this screw first, and then I'll make sure that I'm parallel with my bridge, and I'll place this second screw. I've got to actually get a couple of different screws for this plate. Okay, I don't know exactly how to explain this, but this is a Fender pickguard screw, and this is a import pickguard screw that came with the imported pickguard that I ordered one time. I don't know why exactly, but the Fender heads are just slightly smaller than the imported screws. And even though they're the same size, you know, in terms of the threads, but I'm going to use this larger headed screw to go on the control plate. Seems to fill the hole a little bit better, even though I think these Fender ones would work. Just this one looks better. So we'll just get this lined up. find the center, mark it. And the same for this one. Now I just have to repeat this process on the other 7 screws on the pick guard. Okay, so nothing's really finalized here, but I got my screws, lightly tightened in place. That will keep the holes, marked, and I've got everything sort of pre-aligned. I need to go back and I need to finish the wiring of this control plate and wire the pickups in, basically. I can't really do that, obviously, until I have my neck pickup, but this one may have to go on the shelf for a little while, and I think what I'll do is integrate a little bit of guitar number 3 into this episode, and then we'll have to come back to this one. Unfortunately, I've just got to wait on that neck pickup. This is going to be Telecaster number 3 in the 3 Tellies build. It's a Lido body from GFS, or Guitar Fetish, and the specs around this one are weird. It's not quite full thickness. I think it's 42, 43 millimeter thick, which isn't quite the 1 3/4 standard. It's double bound, which is kind of cool, and it is drilled for string through, but I haven't tested to see if the US ferrules fit this body yet or not. I'm gonna go ahead and assume they don't. The neck pocket is supposedly drilled and ready for a Squire neck. Now, this is the neck that I'm going to be using on this guitar. This is a 27-inch scale baritone neck from a Squire Paranormal. And I just really wanted to build a baritone neck guitar. So that's kind of where I'm going with this thing. And I want it to be kind of a metal guitar. I'm going to put this Seymour Duncan rail Telecaster pickup in the bridge, and I'll put some sort of a humbucker up here in the neck position. And I think I've got a spare JB sitting around, and I know a JB is a bridge pickup, but I saw somebody do a video on YouTube recently where they put a JB in the neck, and I thought it was kind of cool. So I may do something weird like put a JB in the neck. I mean, after all, it's a baritone guitar and it's just super strange anyway. But I have run into a little bit of a stumbling block. I was going to start assembling this today, and I realized that the bridge that I picked out, which is a Squire bridge, but it does not match up with the holes in the body for the string through, and so I think I've got to get a modern Telecaster bridge. I'm really bummed by that because I really wanted this vintage ashtray style, sort of modified bridge with the individual 6 saddles, but I guess it's not meant to be. So got to go shopping and order some stuff. The only things I think I can get done on this, I think I can bolt the neck on, and I think I can go ahead and do the routing for the humbucker. I've got to do a route on this body similar to the way I routed the second body for a middle pickup. So, and I'm not really, honestly, not sure if this hole here for the bridge pickup is big enough. I went ahead and sort of test fit this, and yes, I know this is upside down, but it's just really, really tight in that hole. It won't even go in right side up because of the wire. I did test it earlier and fed the wire through the hole, and it's just super tight down in there. So I'm not sure what I'm going to have to do on that. I may clean this out a little bit. It's got a little bit of flashing from the routing, so I may clean it out with the sanding wheel and see if that's enough to get it in there. Chances are good I'll have to route this too, which is unfortunate, but whatever. It's custom guitar build, so we'll see how that goes. I guess there's a few other things I could take care of. I could mount a jack plate, I could do strap buttons, I could go ahead and get the pick guard mounted and maybe get the control plate mounted too, but Let me start with the easiest thing, which is the neck. Okay, so when I'm mounting this, I'm going to check a few things. I already did kind of a loose check to make sure that the holes that were in the old neck, because this is a used neck obviously, but these holes that are in this neck line up with the holes that are in the body, and they do, so that's good. I also did a quick check to make sure that the screws pass through the body, and they do. So everything's kind of already set up for the way I would want it. So I'm not going to bother filling the holes in the neck and re-drilling them. I'm just going to go ahead and test fit this the way it is. Well, that looks pretty good. I'm using this Squire neck plate, so it's not as recessed as some of the Fender neck plates I've used. So the screws protrude just a tiny bit, but the heads are rounded pretty well, so it's not as big a deal as it could be. But I'm not going to mess with it too much. I mean, this is definitely the least expensive of my 3 builds, and I'm not making it into a cheap guitar. It's just that you know, I was a little bit worried by using all the Squire parts that it wouldn't have much of a resale value, so I'm trying to keep it affordable. I'm not going to skimp on the pickups though. That really has to be good. Okay, well, I'm looking at a couple more parts for this thing. I went ahead and mounted my pick guard just kind of loosely, and my control plate just to check for fit. And so far so good. The control plate, I was worried about it landing in the wood, and it does land in the wood for the 2 mounting points. This guard I'm not so worried about. It looks like it's in a pretty good spot. I'm a little worried that this pickup route looks a little far forward of where it should be, but that may just be because of the bridge I've got to use. I'll check that out. Something stupid. I've got this cheap sort of football style jack plate that I'm going to use for the jack over here, and you know, just a difference. The differences you find when you're working on U.S. and import instruments. Like for example, I started to test fit a regular Switchcraft jack into this thing, and I guess that hole isn't quite 3/8 of an inch. So, you know, silly stuff like this you get into, you have to re-drill this. Also, I know that on the control plate, the pots have a 3/8 inch neck, and that's definitely not 3/8 inches there. So, I've got to re-drill the jack plate, and I've got to re-drill the control plate, and it's just stuff like that you get into when you're mixing parts. Alright, so re-drill now fits fine. You know, when I re-drill these things, I do it on a drill press, which is a little bit difficult to show on the camera, but I cover the whole chrome face in masking tape before I do that drilling, just to make sure I don't scratch anything. And I went ahead and re-drilled the control plate also, so now those are going to fit fine. And I guess I can go ahead and do a little bit of this mounting. So the reason that I wanted to test fit my switch or my jack into my plate here before I test fit this plate is I've got to make sure to center this jack in the hole, and without the jack there it's kind of hard to do it. I think it's going to be about there, and the curvature looks good, so I'm just going to wing this and install it. Looks good. Now I just need to drill those out. So I've drilled my pilots, and I've taken a second pass with a larger bit in reverse just to break through the finish, so that when my screws pass through, they don't crack that hard poly finish around those holes. I saw Fender do that on their Mexican bodies, and it gave me that idea. Okay, well that looks good. Nice and centered, and the screws countersunk well, so I'm happy with that. I think I'll go ahead and mount the strap buttons as well. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but this body was actually a blemished body. And the reason I called it blemished is because there's a little bit of fading on the binding right here on the base, and there's a couple of tiny dark spots in the finish, like one of them's right here. They're so tiny that, you know, they're just inconsequential. And this fading on the binding, I mean, that just looks like age. So I thought it was a great price for a new body, and I jumped on it. They've got those pretty cool clearance specials at guitarfetish.com, and every once in a while they'll run a summer sale or something where you can get extra off clearance, and then it's just a great deal. And you know, I actually don't even get sponsored by Guitar Fetish. I don't get sponsored by anybody yet, so take my word for it. Alright, so back into the world of custom guitar problems. I have these string ferrules, and they're made for a US Fender, and I'm trying them out on this Lido import body here, and they don't fit in the holes for the ferrules, so I'm going to have to re-drill these out to the US spec of 5/16. So that's what I'm working on now. I've already started a test on this one, and 5/16 is going to be just right. The important thing on this is it's a finished hole, so I'm going to do the entire drilling operation in reverse. That'll also keep me from drilling too far in, pulling the drill bit through the body. Alright, so after I finished drilling, I put the ferrules in and tapped them lightly in with the hammer, and they fit fine. So I'm excited about that. You know, the bridge situation has me a little bit annoyed, but I'll find something to make that work. I did also start making a template for my router. I just traced out what I need for the humbucker, and I figured out if I make it a little bit bigger on all sides, basically I'm going to try to match this line that's coming off this single coil route hole right now, and then come down a little bit further than my pickguard line for the humbucker. That'll make a route size big enough to hold the Seymour Duncan that I've got. Yeah, I've transferred that over to a piece of paper, and I'll be making another one of those wood templates that I made for the middle pickup on the other build. So that'll be the second time I've tried to route a hole in a body, but I don't expect any problems with that. Well, look what snuck in here. I got the neck pickup, and so I couldn't resist. I just mounted it real quick, got the wiring done. Not a lot to the wiring. I mean, I'd already had most of the control plate wired before. I just had to connect the pickups themselves. I did my check of phase on my pickups. If you haven't looked at my quick tip on checking pickup phase, make sure you do that. This neck pickup was actually out of phase from the other two, so I had to flip the wires around like I show you in my other video. So anyway, that's ready to go. I raised the bridge height. Now I just got to get some strings on it, and we'll see where we are. If you're wondering, I use the same Ernie Ball hybrid slinky set that I use on a lot of my builds. It's a 9-46 set. And if you haven't watched any of my other videos on stringing guitars, you'll want to pay attention to the string cut length. Basically, you measure out 2 tuners worth of slack and cut the strings there. It's really important on a set of vintage tuners like these, where the strings drop down into the center of the post. Okay, well, I got some strings on here. I'm going to get it tuned up, and well, I need to check the string spacing. They look a little strange to me right now. I think it's these weird compensated saddles, but I'll check the string spacing, and then I'll tune it up, and I'm going to check the neck relief. And I haven't since I haven't used this neck before, I'm going to check the first fret action to see if the nut needs adjusting, because I suspect that it does, but we'll see. Alright, well, I was chasing a electrical bug. I didn't realize it, but I had wired the jack backwards, and man, that took me a minute to find out. But what was happening was, when I played, if I touched the bridge, it would start buzzing. And I mean, it made noise and sounded fine otherwise. It just had a lot of hum. And I was just doing some checking with an ohm meter and realized that between my bridge and my output jack, I actually had like 9K of resistance, which it should have been 0. But anyway, got that flipped around, and now she works great. The magnetic polarity between these two Telecaster pickups here, the bridge and the neck, is opposite, like it should be. So that puts me in an interesting position with this noiseless, because no matter which polarity it has, it's going to be the same as one of its neighbors. But actually, it doesn't seem to pose a problem so far. I mean, I've plugged it in and it seems good. This is a stacked humbucker, so I don't have to worry too much about noise canceling. That's why they're called noiseless pickups. So anyway, I have set the neck relief. It's at a good 12 thousandths. That actually took me a little bit of time to get dialed in just right, because the truss rod on this neck is really sensitive. But I got that done. Let's see, what else have I done? I've got it tuned to pitch, obviously. I've got the action set. I set it to 60 thousandths at the 12th fret on the low E side, and 50 thousandths, or just under 50 thousandths, on the high E side. And next will be intonation. If you're wondering how I do all this stuff, I've shown various adjustments on my quick tips. I think I've shown neck relief. If I haven't shown on the quick tip, it's in many of my other videos. I've shown setting action, and I also set pickup height, and I've shown that too. On this guitar, on Telecasters, I use 6/64ths on the bass side and 5/64ths on the treble side for my pickup height, except on the Strat single coil here, I used 5/64ths and 4/64ths. Sounds really good. So anyway, something I didn't show on camera, I did a light polish on the frets. They had some, this was a heavily used neck, and they had some like divots. It wasn't fret wear, it was like something had knocked into the fret. But anyway, got those cleaned up and taken out. So it's really in good shape. I think the only thing I have left to do is intonation. And I've got to get a switch tip on here. But once I get the intonation done, this thing will be good to go. So I'm going to do that next. If you haven't checked out my other videos that show how to do intonation, be sure to do that. I always tune the 12th fret harmonic and then play the fretted note at the 12th fret. And if the fretted note is sharp, I tighten the bridge screw, and if the fretted note is flat, I loosen the bridge screw, and that's how you achieve good intonation. Alright, so the switch tip completes this build. This is Telecaster 2 of 3, and I've got a lot more work to do on number 3, the Baritone Telecaster. And I'm really excited about the way this one turned out. It's got sort of that aged hardware look to it. It's got a mishmash of parts. It kind of looks, you know, like a really customized, you know, well-used guitar, and that's kind of what I was going for on this one. The Telecaster that I'm doing next, that Baritone Tele that I've been working on in this episode, that one is going to be sort of a more metal rock guitar, so we'll see how that one goes. But this one's all done. I'll just you know, clean it up a little bit, and it's ready to go. Again, if you like my videos, be sure to hit the like button, and also click subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.